Hi, it's Lauren, and today on Stitch Lessons I'm going to show you how to sew a blanket stitch. Blanket stitch is a decorative stitch that looks like a series of short parallel lines with a border of thread running along the seam that connects them. I typically use it to sew two fabric edges together, but you can also modify it slightly to use it to attach an applique to another piece of fabric. Here's how it's done. I'm starting out with some embroidery floss threaded onto a needle, and I tied a knot at the end to keep it from coming undone. Here I have two pieces of felt, and I'm going to use blanket stitch to sew them together along the edges. You can also use this technique around the edge of a blanket. To hide the knot, start your needle between the two pieces of felt. Poke your needle up relatively close to the edge and pull it through until the knot catches on the back. Tuck it in so it won't stick out. Here's where the fun starts. Choose a spot next to where your thread is coming out, the same distance from the edge, and push your needle through both layers of fabric right there. Gently pull your thread through, but leave a loop at the end instead of pulling it tight. Now, reach your needle around the side of the fabric and back up to the front. Put your needle up through that loop, then tighten the thread. That's your first stitch. To start the next one, push your needle down through the front of your work right here, the same distance from your last stitch and from the edge of the fabric. And again, don't pull it all the way through. Leave a loop, bring your needle around the side and up through that loop before you tug on it. Repeat those steps along the edge. To make it a little easier, you can pull on the loop and hold it open with your other hand like this. Remember that your needle always goes down through the front and wraps up around the side. Your needle shouldn't ever be coming back up through the fabric. After a few stitches, your project should start looking something like this. If your work has a corner, here's how to sew around that. Insert your needle down into the same spot where your last stitch was. Once you put your needle around the side and through the loop, try to tighten it so it lands right on the corner like this. Then, put your needle down through that same spot in the fabric one more time. This time, when you tug on your stitch, tighten it on the other edge around the corner. Then you can continue from there as usual. And blanket stitch gives you a nice border around the edges of whatever it is that you're making. To use blanket stitch to attach an applique to a piece of fabric, the steps are pretty similar. Start your thread up from the back like this, slightly in from the edge of the applique. Then push your needle down through both pieces of fabric in the next spot. Now push your needle up just off of the applique in the spot where you would normally be wrapping the thread around the side like this. Put your needle through the loop, then pull it tight. It's pretty much the same, but you have to imagine your needle wrapping around the edge of the applique in order to know where to push your needle up from the back. If your project has curved edges like this circle, I find that it helps to imagine that all of the stitches are pointing in towards the center of the shape. The approach is a little different than if you were stitching on straight lines and corners like we did earlier. When you've stitched all the way around your blanket stitch project or applique, there's one more thing to note. To connect the border of your last stitch to your first one, hook your needle into that first stitch and tug on it to straighten that diagonal line. Then I like to push the needle back down and through to the back to hold that stitch in place and tie off my thread somewhere hidden. And that is how I sew a blanket stitch. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that you make something lovely with what you learned. If you'd like to see more of the hand sewing and embroidery tutorials in this series, be sure to watch the rest of my Stitch Lessons playlist. Click the Stitch Lessons logo on the screen or check the video description for links if you're interested. Happy stitching!